Good evening. There's out of control and there's no stopping them. Rats have always been a problem in our cities, towns and villages, but now they're totally out of control.
The new breed of so-called super rats have become immune to readily available poisons and are reproducing faster than ever before. Latest figures show their numbers have increased by 50% in the last year. The rat population could soar to 160 million by the end of this year.
They will outnumber humans by more than 2 to 1. Our reporter Kerry Johnston has been investigating the worrying spread of the super rats.
It's not what you want to find scavenging in your rubbish. Pest control companies do their best, but so-called super rats are on the increase, according to the latest research.
We have a problem with rats in many parts of the UK where we are no longer able to control them using the poisons or rodenticides that we're legally allowed to use. Because certain populations have developed a level of resistance to an important class of these poisons, and so far, everywhere we look, we're finding these resistance mutations.
And they've been charting rat hotspots across the south, where the rodents are becoming a serious problem. Behind this church and next to a school, pest control experts have been busy trying to exterminate an infestation, much to the relief of the head teacher.
We used to have an occasional rat that used to run across the adventure playground and then into Jason's next door's garden.
What did you think of that when you saw it?
Quite alarmed. And at first we just thought, oh well, of the location, it's just a small family. And then we found out that it was a slightly bigger problem than we anticipated.
Lately it's got really bad, and that's evident by how much the dogs start digging up in the garden. We felt that we had to take some action, particularly when some of the parents of children at school noticed some rats. And obviously with children you've got to be very careful about the rats' diseases and things like that.
The kids can now play in peace in this area thanks to the prompt action of a pest control company. But they too have concerns over the future.
The rats that we have, that we predominantly look after, are brown rats or Rattus norvegicus. The downside is that they are becoming, in some cases, completely immune, but certainly resistant to some of the second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides.
And that's a problem, as brown rats can pass on the potentially deadly Viles disease through contaminated water in sewers. But help may be on its way.
We have been in discussions with the Health and Safety Executive, and there are moves to try and allow these more potent rodenticides to be used in and around farm buildings.
But stronger bait may adversely affect wildlife. As the debate continues to rage, the rats continue to breed. Kerry Johnston, ITV News.
Well, the rise of super rats is the subject of a special ITV report by Chris Choi later this evening. We spoke to him earlier and I asked him just how bad is the problem here in the ITV Meridian region.
Well, around these parts, they're calling it the summer of the super rat because there's real evidence growing now from around the region that this is becoming a growing menace. It actually takes an awful lot of lab work to work out which are the super rats because the difference is in their DNA, and it does take laboratory tests. Now, I've got the results here. Let me just read off a list of the places where we now have confirmed super rats. We're talking about Farringdon, Didcot, Wantage, Uttington, Oxford, Salisbury, Winchester, Reading and Southampton. In all of those places now we have the lab evidence that super rats have got a foothold.
So, what's being done about it?
Well, it's a difficult one. The government's discussing now whether or not to authorise use of stronger poisons to deal with this kind of problem. The issue here, though, is that whilst people that have got the super rats on their doorstep may be crying out for strong poisons, people that care about the local countryside say, hang on a minute, if you use those poisons on the rats, won't it also affect things like the barn owls, which are very common in certain woodland areas around the region? Dormice, voles, all these things need to be protected. We can't use poisons more liberally.
So how do you see this problem being solved?
It's got to be solved quickly because the rats are given this evolutionary advantage, building on it and growing numbers all the time. By the end of this summer, government must make a decision on the way forward. We know the size of the problem. What we're not quite sure of now is what the solution is.
Chris Choi, we look forward to your programme, I think.
Well, earlier we asked you for your thoughts about the super rats on our Facebook page.
Zena Braithwaite, first of all, from Gosport, says the reason for more rats is because we get our rubbish cleared once a fortnight instead of every week, and people have more rubbish now than ever before.
Debbie Horn from Tisbury posted, I'm invaded with them. I've had the council round 3 times. They are driving me mad. The rats, not the council.
Leslie Gilbert from West Sussex says it's wrong to blame people feeding birds for the problem. She wrote, people have been feeding birds for decades. I get rats in my garden every summer. Nothing new. And yes, some of them are big too.
Natasha Winning from Portsmouth says, I have rats in my loft and the poison doesn't do anything. They are a pain and make a load of noise.
That's an entirely different view from Katz Drew, also from Portsmouth. She says, I've got them in my garden. I don't mind them at all. Well, thank you for all of your comments. Do please keep them coming.
And of course, that programme, The Rise of the Super Rats, is here on ITV at 7:30 this evening. And you can also find out more on our website. Scan this code on your smartphone or device and it will take you straight there. Or on your computer, go to itv.com/news/Meridian.
The body of an elderly woman has been discovered at her flat in Bournemouth 6 years after she's believed to have died. Her remains were found by bailiffs who entered the property to recover unpaid debts. Welfare organisations are now asking how such a tragic event could happen in this day and age.
Well, for the very latest, Sarah Cooper joins us now from the newsroom. Sarah, what more can you tell us?
Well, as you say, bailiffs went into the flat to recover some unpaid debts, and that's when they found the body of a woman in her 70s in a mummified state. It was so badly decomposed that they weren't even sure it was a body. They made the discovery inside a ground floor flat in Tolpuddle Gardens in Throop on Tuesday. Bailiffs and a locksmith got inside via 2 windows that were left slightly open. Neighbours say nobody realised what had happened. They simply thought the pensioner had moved away 6 years ago.
Well, we're all shocked. I mean, it's families that live in the close and we're all very friendly and our kids all play together. So very shocked.
Well, when I first heard about it, I didn't believe it. I didn't think that someone could be there on their own for that long and no one would have noticed that they'd gone. I did hear that people thought she'd moved away.
Sarah, are the police investigating?
Well, they've told us that this death is not being treated as suspicious. They say their officers were called to the flat on Tuesday to reports of a body found, and the coroner has now been notified.
And how have welfare organisations reacted to this?
It's been described as a sad and shocking case by the charity The Silver Line. It's a free phone line to help tackle loneliness in the over 75s. They've done a survey that suggests that more than half of 75-year-olds in the UK live alone and that 1 in 10 of those suffers intense loneliness. Clearly, this case is a worrying example of what can happen when older people are isolated with nobody to check they're OK.
Very sad. Sarah, thank you.
In other news, a motorist accused of causing the deaths of 2 people when an ambulance crashed in the New Forest may have had his view of it obscured by another vehicle, a jury has heard. 26-year-old Richard Husband from Brockenhurst has claimed he did check his mirror before pulling out to overtake another car on the A337 last year. The ambulance, with blue lights flashing, was approaching from behind. Mr. Husband denies causing death by careless driving. The case continues tomorrow.
The death of a policeman killed in a motorbike crash last year was an accident, an inquest has found. PC Steve Rawson, who was 40 and a father of 2, died when his bike crashed into a silver BMW on Thomas Lewis Way in Southampton in April last year. PC Rawson was on an undercover surveillance operation and travelling at around 90 miles an hour when the crash happened.
Communities in Hampshire which were hit by the floods earlier this year have been working with the fire service to create an emergency plan in case they are affected again. Many villages, of course, were left cut off during the wettest winter on record. The plans include where to get sandbags and how to help more vulnerable members of the community.
RSPCA inspectors in the south have launched a campaign to find homes for horses they've nursed back to health. There's been a record number of abused and abandoned animals. The charity thinks it's due to falling horse prices and rising feed and care costs.
Meanwhile, a campaign has been launched to improve a busy commuter route in West Sussex. The county councils joined forces with local MPs and business leaders in a bid to reduce bottlenecks on the A27 at Chichester, Arundel and Worthing.
You're watching ITV News Meridian. Plenty coming up, including Simon Parkin and where he might have some good news for gardeners.
Spot of rain, maybe, who knows? Plus, an insight into the private lives of the rich, famous and powerful.
And of course, for more on all of our stories, head to our website, itv.com/news/Meridian. Any views or news, why not call us on 0808 1010 095 or get in touch via Facebook or Twitter. The scale of the abuse carried out by Jimmy Savile at hospitals around the country has been revealed in a series of reports published today in London.
One of the worst examples, Broadmoor, the high-security hospital at Crowthorne in Berkshire. Live now to our correspondent Phil Hornby. Phil, what did we find out today?
Well, Fred, in these reports, some pretty terrible details of the sort of stuff Jimmy Savile got up to. A pretty bleak picture, too, of life at Broadmoor in the 1980s, talking about poor staff relations, about internal conflict, about the mistreatment of patients. A situation, they say, that Jimmy Savile was uniquely placed to exploit. Another hospital boss said today, "We were all taken in by a clever and manipulative man. We let our guard down, and as a result, people got harmed."
I would like to offer them all an unreserved apology.
I can offer my most sincere and heartfelt apology.
I want to apologise.
We are truly sorry.
It was a grim morning. Sorry seemed to be the only word. There were few new revelations, but even the stories we've heard before still seem unbelievable. He didn't just get access to Broadmoor Hospital, he was put in charge of the place.
We will try to resolve that everybody's happy. There is no reason why everybody can't be happy.
Thinking Savile could improve things for Broadmoor patients was, today's report says, naive and deeply ironic. There were 11 allegations of him carrying out abuse here, but the true number of victims is likely to be much higher.
There seems to me no doubt that Savile was an opportunistic sexual predator throughout the time that he was associated with Broadmoor.
Today's reports don't really answer the question, how was he allowed to get away with it, beyond saying everyone seemed to be starstruck. Everyone turned a blind eye.
Hospitals have rules with patients and things like that. Well, because I'm dyslexic when I want to be, I don't understand rules.
As a nation at that time, we held Savile in our affection as a somewhat eccentric national treasure with a strong commitment to charitable causes.
And his victims were either not listened to or not believed.
My clients did report it to members of staff and those reports weren't acted upon, and Savile could have been stopped in his tracks.
The former head of Women's Services at Broadmoor agrees. She says she tried to blow the whistle 11 years ago on what she saw as institutionalised abuse there and lost her job as a result.
I feel he could have been stopped sooner. He should never have been given that level of responsibility, and if people had listened to me in 2003, there would have been a full and independent inquiry then.
The MP who represents Broadmoor referred to a bizarre letter Savile sent to government ministers, calling himself Dr. Jimmy Savile.
I cannot believe that people would have received this correspondence and not been deeply concerned about this vile man's involvement in a high-security hospital.
It's a scandal with still so many unanswered questions. Unanswered questions about the hospitals dealt with in these reports today, 28 of them all over the country. But even this isn't the end of the story, because there are still 4 inquiries going on about other hospitals, including Crawley in Sussex and most notably perhaps Stoke Mandeville in Buckinghamshire, where Jimmy Savile, of course, for many years had very close association with that place. Then there's the inquiry about what went on at the BBC. So the Jimmy Savile saga still has a long way to run.
Truly a most disturbing story. Phil Hornby at Westminster, thank you very much indeed.
Nutrition experts are encouraging parents to put water on the table at mealtimes instead of fruit juice and fizzy drinks to try to reduce sugar intake. Childhood obesity continues to increase in the country and steps must be made, they say, to tackle it.
Well, the latest statistics show that many children are getting bigger, and Portsmouth is a real hotspot for this problem. There, 24% of 4 to 5-year-olds are overweight or obese, and over a third of 10 to 11-year-olds.
But it's a national problem, so health experts say it's time for a national drive to stop it. Lauren Hall has our report.
The tempting treats giving many of us a sugar rush. It seems we can't get enough of them.
Yes, I am a sugar addict. I suppose it's perhaps not correct with the dietitians and the world we live in, but I like sugar.
Chocolate, cakes, yeah, any sugary foods, yeah. Sugary drinks as well.
Do you like any chocolate or anything? Do you? No, sometimes we eat chocolate, don't we?
We all do, that's the problem. Sugary foods and drink are linked to obesity, which can have serious health risks.
There's nothing quite like the sound of a fizzy drink being opened on a warm summer's day. But in recent years, it's been competing with another sound, the sound of health experts warning that fizzy drinks and other sugary treats are bad for us. And they seem to be getting louder and louder.
Today, a group advising the government suggests we need to halve our intake of sugar when it's added to food and drink, as well as sugars occurring naturally in things like smoothies and fruit juice. The question is, how?
I don't think there is a quick fix. I don't think there's one answer to all of this, and a range of measures will need to be considered, both from personal choice for the individual, for the industry making changes to their products, and from government policy. It's not going to be an easy way forward, but it is something that needs to be done for our nation's health.
There's a particular focus on sugar-sweetened drinks. A standard can contains around 6 teaspoons of sugar. It's the largest source of sugar intake in teenagers, accounting for 30% of their total sugar intake, and most teens drink around 1 can a day. Some have called for a tax on sugary drinks, but the industry is not convinced it would make any difference.
There's no evidence to suggest that it would have an impact. What we need to do is work together to try and address patterns of behaviour, change patterns of behaviour. Let's encourage parents and teenagers to be aware of the low and no calorie options available to them. Not a problem having a full sugar product as long as you're taking some exercise and got it as part of a balanced diet, but don't overconsume and look at the other alternatives.
It's not yet known what action will be taken in the future. What is certain is our appetite for sugar has led to an appetite for change and the promotion of healthier lifestyles. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
Well, it's been reported that after finding out she'd been cleared of all charges in the phone hacking trial, the Oxfordshire resident Rebecca Brooks partied at her London home with friends including Jeremy Clarkson.
But the former newspaper editor is also a resident in Chipping Norton, where it's thought she's heading home tonight. Once a sleepy place, it's now attracted many celebrities and people in power who've become known as the Chipping Norton set.
Rachel Hepworth has been to find out more about the town that's been thrown into the limelight because of the hacking investigation.
It's market day in Chipping Norton, a working town with a proud heritage and a favourite for the stallholders.
A lot of other markets we do, you do tend to get a bit of riff-raff, but you don't find that around here.
So no riff-raff then, but it has gained this reputation of wealth and power, a big change from when Daily Mail columnist Andrew Pearce started his career here.
It was sleepy and boring and nothing ever happened, and who would have thought 30 years later it was home to the most powerful and influential media mafia we've ever seen. Those few square miles arguably have more influence and power than you would even find in Downing Street.
So who exactly lives here? Well, there's the Prime Minister, of course. David and Samantha Cameron have a house at Dean, a few miles away from Rebecca Brooks and her husband Charlie, who was at Eton with Mr Cameron. Down the road in Burford live Rupert Murdoch's daughter Elizabeth and her husband, the PR Supremo Matthew Freud. Around the corner until recently, Cameron's head of strategy, Steve Hilton, and his wife, who's head of communications for Google. Then there's the entrepreneurs. Charles Dunstan, the richest man in Oxfordshire, the Bamford family, owners of JCB and major Conservative donors. And among the local celebrities, Blur's Alex James and journalist Jeremy Clarkson, such a close friend of David Cameron's that the Prime Minister appeared as the Stig in Clarkson's 50th birthday video. But as Clarkson himself said, 99% of people in Chipping Norton aren't part of the Chipping Norton set. And 99% of the Chipping Norton set don't actually live in Chipping Norton.
I mean, I don't believe they're any better than any of us, really. Perhaps a bit more money.
The fact that the Chipping Norton set has got a name around here, I don't think makes much difference to all of us that live here. We just love living here.
So you're not out at the Prime Minister's house then?
No, not today.
No, not today.
Okay, right, Judy, let's...
The man with his finger on Chippy's pulse is Keith Ruddle, joint editor of the town's community newspaper, run by volunteers.
I think everybody's a bit fed up with the notion that there's some kind of notoriety sort of lurking about here, which, again, isn't anything to do with the people in the town. And I think, to be honest, a bit fed up with national journalists coming around here and asking questions about it.
Keith is pragmatic, however, and has offered Rebecca Brooks a job.
It's basic journalism. It's pen and paper. It's round reporting everything that goes on. If she or any of her colleagues wanted to contribute to community affairs in the town, we'd be delighted.
Rachel Hepworth, ITV News in Chipping Norton.
Now, for 21 years, fans of fast cars and racing drivers have been descending on Goodwood in Sussex to rub shoulders with the stars and meet like-minded petrol heads with an appreciation for the automobile.
This year, the theme of the famous 4-day Festival of Speed is Addicted to Speed, and Sarah Gom has been to have a look at what's there to wow the visitors.
This year's event is the 21st annual Goodwood Festival of Speed, and the celebration of all things motorsport seems to get bigger and better every year, attracting thousands of enthusiasts and some of motorsport's biggest names. The Festival of Speed has established itself as one of the most respected motoring festivals in Europe, combining racing up Goodwood's famous hill climb with action on its circuit and displays of some of the world's most classic cars. It's the vision of Lord March, who more than 20 years ago decided to resurrect the motor racing heritage of his family's estate.
This is extraordinary. In '93 we started and we were told we'd be lucky to get a couple of thousand people. I think we got 20,000 people that first year. That took us enough by surprise. And we've been kind of at it ever since, but we'll have over 200,000 people here probably this weekend. I think it's always been, funny enough, it's been the same thing right back to that very first year. It's about getting close. So it's access, getting close to the cars, being able to get right up to the F1 cars, talk to the drivers, see those great Grand Prix cars before the war, and see cars you never see anywhere else in the world. I mean, there have been more great cars here, amazing, in the last 20 years than anywhere else in the world. This is, hallowed soil.
The festival has become the place to celebrate motor racing landmarks. Among those being acknowledged this weekend is the centenary of Italian manufacturer Maserati and the 50th anniversary of John Surtees' 1964 F1 title win.
Exactly, it's a great anniversary for John for his World Championship, 50 years since he won the World Championship. And of course we've got his great Ferraris here, which he did that, and also so much of John's history caught up with this place. He had his very first race at Goodwood. And in fact, I think he actually saw his very first motor race, amazing, at Goodwood, and that was a race he took part in, which is quite extraordinary.
As well as John Surtees, visitors to Goodwood this weekend can expect to see F1 world champion Kimi Raikkonen, Jenson Button, Sir Jackie Stewart and Damon Hill, all lending their support to this year's theme, Addicted to Winning, the unbeatable champions of motorsport. The Festival of Speed begins here at Goodwood in earnest tomorrow, when a spectacular centrepiece will be unveiled outside Goodwood House, commemorating the 120th anniversary of Mercedes-Benz involvement in motorsport, and the action continues here until Sunday.
Sarah Gom reporting there, and from Sporty Sarah to Speedy Simon now.
Now, what were you doing last night between about 7:15 and 8:15?
I was here reading the news.
And I'm glad you were, and many of us were watching you doing that fine work. However, one or two of us were also in our gardens looking up at the sky, where we spotted something a little strange. Have a look at this picture. This is from Paul and Debbie Wilkinson in Waterlooville. They were watching their son do football training when they spotted An upside-down rainbow, look at 6:45. Jane emailed to say that 8-year-old daughter Alicia spotted this one over their house in Brighton at 7:45. They'd like to know how it's formed. I'll tell you in a sec. Derek Gatenby was also out in Liss in Hampshire with his 6-year-old son Warren. They saw one too. And meanwhile in Stanmore, Jeff Kilkenny saw one at 7:30. And Shirley Moore, get this, managed to find one where it looks like the rainbow is coming out of a dolphin's mouth, look. Wow. And finally, Janice Hopwood. This was above our house in Hazelmere in Surrey yesterday evening. Very magical, she says. Has it got something to do with ice crystals? Yes, it has. It's called a circumzenithal arc, and normally yet for a rainbow, the sun's refraction through rain. In this case, it's ice up in the upper atmosphere.
You could work on a show called How.
I'll give it a go.
And for those not out spotting rainbows, is Simon with your forecast.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France. Here we are on La Plage.
Driving to Europe, Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, the rainbows you're likely to see over the next few days will probably be the right way up, and there might be more than a few of them as well, because things are turning unsettled and changeable. We've got low pressure in charge. Now, this evening we have a band of showery outbreaks of rain working its way northwards over the next few hours, and once that's cleared through, we're dry for a time, and then tomorrow we get more showers developing. There is a Met Office weather warning in place running from tomorrow morning until late on Saturday, because we could see some heavy thundery downpours at times. Now, for this evening, as I say, there's that band of showery outbreaks of rain working northward. Quite patchy the rain for some of us. There will be an odd heavier burst here and there. By around midnight, we're pretty much dry everywhere. Lots of cloud though, so a mild night, 13, 14 the overnight low. And it might be dry first thing tomorrow morning, but pretty quickly we're going to see the showers get going. Heavy, potentially thundery, a risk of some localised flooding. We could get more than an inch falling in a short space of time. But there will be dry spells around those showers, particularly as the afternoon goes on down towards the south coast, and temperatures in the best of the brightness, 19-20 degrees. High tide times tomorrow, well, you can see in Brighton just the one, about 12.
Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
The Pollen Count, sponsored by Checkatrade.com.
Checkatrade.com.
Well, thanks to those downpours tomorrow. Good news if you're a hay fever sufferer, because the pollen levels will drop to moderate, and it'll be the same again on Saturday, although they will rise as things settle down through Sunday.
In just a moment here on ITV, we have the national and international news with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
Join Sangeeta for our late news, but for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks very much for watching. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye.